The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the country club ballroom. 200 guests fell silent as Marcus Thompson, my sister's fiancé of 3 years, pulled away from my lips, his hands still cupping my face. The engagement ring he'd just placed on Elena's finger caught the chandelier light as she stood frozen at the podium, her mouth open in shock. That single moment destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family, my sister, and the man who was supposed to become my brother-in-law in 6 months. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 weeks earlier, I'd driven down from Portland to help Elena plan what she called the engagement party of the century. My younger sister had always been dramatic, but this time she wasn't exaggerating. The Riverside Country Club's grand ballroom was booked. The guest list included everyone from our hometown of Millbrook, plus half of Marcus's business associates from Seattle. And Elena had hired the same event planner who'd organized Senator Richardson's daughter's wedding. I pulled into the circular driveway of Elena's Victorian home on Maple Street, the same house where we'd grown up after Dad's promotion to bank president. The white picket fence still needed a fresh coat of paint, and Mom's rose garden was in full bloom. Elena burst through the front door before I'd even turned off the engine, her blonde hair bouncing as she ran toward my car in designer heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Sophia, you're finally here!" She threw her arms around me, enveloping me in her signature vanilla perfume. "I have so much to show you. The dress samples arrived yesterday, and the florist wants to discuss the centerpiece arrangements. And Marcus surprised me with the most incredible vintage champagne for the toast." Elena had always been the golden child, homecoming queen, valedictorian, full scholarship to Northwestern. While I'd struggled through community college and bounced between marketing jobs, she'd landed a position at a prestigious law firm, straight out of graduation. Meeting Marcus Thompson had been the final piece of her perfect puzzle. He owned 3 successful restaurants in the Pacific Northwest, and had that easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. "Slow down," I laughed, grabbing my overnight bag from the back seat. "I'm here for the whole weekend. We have plenty of time." "Actually, we don't." Elena's expression grew serious as we walked toward the house. Marcus flew in early for some business meetings, and Mom's been in full mother-of-the-bride mode for weeks. She's already rearranged the living room furniture twice to accommodate the gift display table. Mom appeared in the doorway, her graying hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Sophia, honey, you look tired. Are you eating enough? You know you can always move back home if that Portland job isn't working out." "The job's fine, Mom," I said, giving her a hug. I'm just excited to celebrate Elena's big moment. The next 2 days blurred together in a whirlwind of wedding planning chaos. Elena dragged me to 3 different bakeries to taste cake samples, spent 4 hours at the bridal boutique debating between ivory and champagne-colored tablecloths, and insisted on personally approving every item on the catering menu. I'd forgotten how exhausting my sister could be when she fixated on something. Marcus arrived Thursday evening, pulling up in his black BMW just as Elena and I returned from our final venue walkthrough. He stepped out of the car looking like he'd walked off the pages of a men's fashion magazine, tailored navy suit, perfectly styled dark hair, and that $1 million smile that had probably charmed half the women in Seattle. "There's my beautiful fiancé," he said, sweeping Elena into his arms and spinning her around on the front lawn, "and the famous sister I've heard so much about." He turned to me with that same confident smile, extending his hand. "Sophia, right? Elena talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." His handshake lingered a moment longer than necessary, his green eyes holding mine with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite identify. Curiosity, maybe, or assessment, like he was trying to figure something out. "She exaggerates," I said, pulling my hand away. "I'm just the boring older sister who works in marketing and lives in a studio apartment." "I doubt that," Marcus replied, his gaze still fixed on my face. "Elena mentioned you have a master's degree in communications. That's impressive." Elena beamed, linking her arm through Marcus's. "See? I told you she was being modest." Sophia could have worked anywhere, but she chose Portland because she wanted to be independent. She's always been the brave one in the family. Something flickered across Marcus's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He studied me with renewed interest, as if seeing me for the first time. Independent, he repeated slowly. I like that in a person. The comment felt loaded with meaning I didn't understand, but Elena was already pulling him toward the house, chattering about the evening's dinner plans. I followed behind, telling myself I was imagining the strange tension in that moment. Friday morning brought controlled chaos as the event planning team transformed the country club ballroom. Elena appointed herself as the unofficial supervisor, marching around in her designer jeans and clipboard, pointing out every minor detail that needed adjustment. The florists rearranged the centerpieces 3 times before she approved the height of the white orchids. The caterers endured her detailed critique of the appetizer presentation. Even the string quartet received specific instructions about their positioning near the dance floor. Elena, they're professionals, I said during a brief break in her micromanaging. Maybe let them do their jobs? This has to be perfect, Sophia, she replied, checking items off her list with aggressive pen strokes. Marcus's business partners will be here tonight. The Hendersons from the Seattle Restaurant Association, the Yamadas who own that chain of sushi places, even James Mitchell from the Food Network. This party could open doors for Marcus's expansion plans. I hadn't realized the engagement party was doubling as a business networking event, but it explained Elena's obsessive attention to detail. She'd always been ambitious, but since meeting Marcus, that ambition had intensified into something sharper and more calculated. Marcus appeared beside us, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the country club's cafe. Ladies, you both look like you need caffeine. He handed 1 cup to Elena and offered the second to me. Our fingers brushed as I accepted it, and again I felt that strange, electric moment of contact. This time, I was certain I hadn't imagined it. Marcus's fingers lingered against mine, his thumb lightly stroking across my knuckles before I pulled away. Thank you, I said quietly, not meeting his eyes. Elena was already distracted by a new crisis involving the gift table placement, leaving Marcus and me standing alone near the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows. The afternoon sunlight streamed across the polished hardwood floors, highlighting the elegant table settings and elaborate floral arrangements. Your sister has exquisite taste, Marcus said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. She's always been a perfectionist, I replied, focusing on the workers arranging chairs rather than looking at him directly. Is that a family trait? The question caught me off guard. I glanced up to find him watching me with that same intense expression from the night before, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. Not really, I said. Elena got all the perfectionist genes. I'm more of the good enough type. Marcus laughed, a rich sound that made something flutter in my chest. Somehow I doubt that. Elena mentioned you turned down 3 job offers before choosing Portland. That sounds pretty selective to me. I was surprised Elena had shared those details. My job search had been a source of family tension. Mom couldn't understand why I'd reject higher-paying positions in favor of a smaller company that offered more creative freedom. Those other jobs weren't the right fit, I explained. Because they didn't offer what you really wanted, Marcus said, his voice taking on a different quality. I understand that completely. Sometimes you have to wait for exactly what you're looking for, even if other people don't understand your choices. There was something in his tone that suggested he wasn't just talking about career decisions. The way he was looking at me made my pulse quicken in a way that felt dangerous and wrong. Sophia, Elena's voice cut through the moment like a knife. Can you help me with the seating charts? I want to make sure Marcus's Seattle friends are positioned strategically near the potential investors. I stepped away from Marcus gratefully, but I could feel his eyes following me as I crossed the ballroom to help my sister. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of last-minute preparations, but I remained hyper-aware of Marcus's presence. Every time I looked up from whatever task Elena had assigned me, I found him watching me with that same unreadable expression. By evening, the ballroom had been transformed into something worthy of a magazine spread. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in champagne-colored linens and adorned with towering arrangements of white orchids and roses. The string quartet played softly near the dance floor, and servers in crisp uniforms circulated with silver trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvre. Elena looked stunning in a midnight blue cocktail dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings Marcus had given her for her birthday. She moved through the crowd like a natural hostess, charming Marcus's business associates and catching up with childhood friends who'd driven in from neighboring towns. I'd chosen a simple black dress and minimal jewelry, preferring to blend into the background while Elena enjoyed her spotlight. But as the evening progressed, I noticed Marcus's attention kept drifting in my direction, even while he was deep in conversation with potential business partners. The formal toasts were scheduled for 9 o'clock, after dinner had been served and the champagne had flowed freely enough to loosen tongues and warm hearts. Dad took the microphone first, delivering a heartfelt speech about watching his little girl grow into a remarkable woman. Mom followed with tears in her eyes, welcoming Marcus into the family and sharing embarrassing childhood stories about Elena's wedding planning obsession that dated back to age 5. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Then it was Marcus's turn. He moved to the small podium with the confidence of someone accustomed to public speaking, his presence commanding the attention of every person in the room. The conversations died away as he adjusted the microphone and smiled at the expectant faces surrounding him. 3 years ago, he began, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted from life. I had my restaurants, my 5-year business plan, my carefully organized schedule that left no room for surprises. Then I met Elena at that charity auction, and she turned my entire world upside down. Elena beamed from her seat at the head table, her hand pressed to her heart as Marcus continued his speech. The crowd murmured appreciatively as he described their first date, their shared dreams for the future, and his certainty that Elena was the woman he wanted to spend his life with. But tonight, Marcus said, his tone shifting slightly, I realize there's something else I need to say, something I should have said weeks ago. The ballroom fell completely silent. Elena's smile flickered slightly, confusion creeping into her expression as Marcus's gaze swept across the room and landed directly on me. Sometimes, he continued, his green eyes locked on mine, you meet someone who changes everything you thought you knew about yourself. Someone who makes you question every decision you've ever made and wonder if you've been living the wrong life entirely. My heart began pounding so hard I was certain everyone in the room could hear it. Elena's face had gone pale, her confident smile replaced by growing alarm as she followed Marcus's gaze to where I sat frozen in my chair. Elena, Marcus said, finally looking back at his fiancé, deserves someone who can love her completely, without reservation or doubt. Someone who isn't constantly wondering what if about another person. The champagne glass slipped from Elena's fingers, hitting the table with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the stunned silence. Marcus set down the microphone and stepped away from the podium, moving with purposeful strides across the ballroom floor. Toward me. Time seemed to slow as Marcus crossed the ballroom floor. Each step felt deliberate, final, like he was walking toward an inevitable conclusion that had been building since the moment we met. The guests began murmuring, their voices creating a low buzz of confusion that filled the elegant space. I wanted to stand up, to run, to disappear through the French doors that led to the country club's gardens, but my legs felt like they were made of concrete. Marcus, what are you doing? Elena's voice cut through the ambient noise, high and sharp with panic. She pushed back from the head table, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that made several people wince. He didn't answer her. His green eyes never left mine, as he navigated between the round tables draped in champagne linens, past the bewildered faces of Seattle business associates and Millbrook neighbors who'd known our family for decades. Mrs. Henderson from down the street clutched her pearls. The Yamadas exchanged worried glances. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, their instruments falling silent as they watched the drama unfold. When Marcus reached my table, he extended his hand toward me. His expression was calm, almost serene, as if he'd finally found peace after wrestling with some internal struggle for weeks. Sophia, he said quietly, his voice carrying despite the whispered conversations surrounding us, dance with me. No. The word came out as barely a whisper. I shook my head, my dark hair falling forward to partially hide my burning cheeks. Marcus, this is insane. Think about what you're doing. I have been thinking about it, he replied, his hands still outstretched. For 3 weeks, since the moment I met you, I've thought about nothing else. Elena appeared beside him, her face flushed with humiliation and rising anger. The confident hostess who'd commanded the room all evening had been replaced by a woman whose carefully constructed world was crumbling in front of 200 witnesses. Stop this right now, she hissed, grabbing Marcus's arm. Whatever game you think you're playing, it ends here. These people are our friends, our family. Your business partners are watching. Marcus gently but firmly pulled his arm from her grasp, his attention still focused entirely on me. I'm sorry, Elena. I never meant for it to happen this way, but I can't pretend anymore. Pretend what? Elena's voice rose to a pitch that made the elderly guests at the nearest table lean away uncomfortably. We've been together for 3 years. We're getting married in 6 months. The invitations are already ordered. I know, Marcus said, his voice heavy with regret. And that's exactly why I have to do this now, before we make an even bigger mistake. The ballroom had descended into chaos. Dad was pushing through the crowd, his face thunderous as he approached our table. Mom had her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her daughter's perfect evening disintegrate. The Seattle business crowd looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor, while the Millbrook locals seemed torn between horror and fascination at witnessing such spectacular drama. Marcus Thompson, you get away from my daughter right now, Dad's voice boomed across the space as he reached us. His banker's composure had completely evaporated, replaced by the protective fury of a father watching his family be torn apart. I don't know what kind of man you think you are, but this behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Mr. Chen, I understand your anger, Marcus said, finally turning away from me to face my father. I know this looks terrible, and I know I'm hurting Elena. That's the last thing I ever wanted to do, but sometimes the right thing feels wrong to everyone else. The right thing? Elena's voice cracked with disbelief. The right thing would have been figuring this out before you proposed to me. Before we sent save the dates to 300 people. Before I turned down that partnership track position in Chicago because I wanted to stay here with you. That last revelation hit like a physical blow. I hadn't known Elena had sacrificed a career opportunity for Marcus. The guilt that had been building in my chest since his speech began now felt crushing, making it difficult to breathe. You turned down the partnership track? I whispered, looking at my sister's devastated face. Of course I did, Elena snapped, her anger now directed at me. I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. I thought we were a team. Her voice broke on the last word, and she pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Marcus took a step toward Elena, his expression anguished. You are incredible, and any man would be lucky to have you. But I can't be that man, not when I feel this way about someone else. You deserve better than half of someone's heart. Don't you dare, Elena said, her voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare try to make this about what I deserve. This is about you being a coward who couldn't be honest about your feelings until you had an audience to witness your grand romantic gesture. She was right, and we all knew it. Marcus could have ended their engagement privately, could have spared Elena the public humiliation of having her relationship implode in front of everyone she cared about. Instead, he'd chosen the most devastating possible moment to blow up both their lives. Elena, please, I started, but she whirled on me with fury blazing in her blue eyes. No, Sophia, you don't get to talk right now. Not when you've been playing innocent while stealing my fiancé. Her voice carried across the ballroom, ensuring that every guest heard her accusation. I didn't steal anyone, I protested, standing up so quickly my chair nearly toppled over. I never encouraged this. I never even spoke to him alone until today. But you felt it too, didn't you? Marcus interjected, his voice cutting through our argument. The connection between us. You felt it the moment we met. The honesty in his tone made it impossible to lie, even though the truth would destroy what remained of my relationship with Elena. That doesn't mean I acted on it, I said quietly. But you did feel it, he pressed, taking another step closer to me. And you've been thinking about it just like I have. Elena let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like a sob. Oh, this is perfect. My own sister, the one person I trusted completely, has been having some emotional affair with my fiancé right under my nose. It wasn't an affair, I said desperately. We never did anything wrong. A few conversations, some eye contact. That's all. I swear to you, Elena, nothing physical ever happened. Until now, Marcus said softly, and before I could process what he meant, his hands were cupping my face, and his lips were pressed against mine. The kiss lasted only seconds, but it felt like the entire world shifted on its axis. I could taste the champagne on his lips, feel the warmth of his palms against my cheeks, smell his cologne, mixed with the faint scent of the orchids that decorated every table. For that brief moment, nothing else existed. Not the gasping crowd, not Elena's anguished cry, not the sound of my champagne glass hitting the floor and shattering into 1,000 pieces. When Marcus pulled away, the silence in the ballroom was deafening. Even the servers had stopped moving, frozen with their trays of untouched canapés, as they stared at the wreckage of what had been, just minutes earlier, a perfect engagement celebration. Elena stood completely still, her face white with shock and betrayal. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she made no sound, as if the magnitude of what had just happened had left her speechless. The diamond engagement ring on her finger caught the chandelier light, a cruel reminder of the future that had just been destroyed. Elena, I whispered, reaching toward her, but she stepped back as if I were toxic. Don't, she said, her voice hollow. Don't you dare touch me. Dad moved between us, his face flushed with anger as he pointed at Marcus. Get out, both of you, get out of here right now before I call security. Mr. Chen, please, Marcus began, but Dad cut him off. I said, get out, you've done enough damage for one night. The Seattle business associates were already gathering their things, clearly wanting to escape the family drama as quickly as possible. The string quartet had begun packing their instruments. Even the catering staff looked like they were preparing to shut down the evening early, sensing that the party was definitively over. Marcus looked at Elena one more time, his expression heavy with remorse. I'm sorry, he said simply. I know you'll never forgive me, but I am truly sorry it happened this way. Elena didn't respond. She stood frozen in place, staring at the shattered champagne glass at my feet as if it represented everything that had just been broken beyond repair. Marcus turned to me, his green eyes intense with an emotion I couldn't identify. Sophia, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to talk. Away from here, away from all of this. She's not going anywhere with you, Dad interjected, his voice carrying the authority he used in difficult business negotiations. You've caused enough chaos for one evening. But Marcus's gaze remained fixed on mine, waiting for my answer. The entire ballroom seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. My sister stood heartbroken and humiliated in her beautiful dress, surrounded by the ruins of her perfect party. My parents looked at me with disappointment and confusion, as if they didn't recognize the daughter they'd raised. 200 guests watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as my family imploded in real time. I knew that whatever choice I made in this moment would define the rest of my life. There would be no going back, no pretending this hadn't happened, no returning to the comfortable dynamic we'd maintained for 28 years. Everything was about to change, and I was the only one who could decide how. The weight of every pair of eyes in the ballroom pressed down on me like a physical force. My heart hammered against my ribs as I looked between Marcus's expectant face and Elena's tear-streaked devastation. The choice felt impossible. Follow the man who'd just upended everything for a connection I barely understood, or stay and watch my family relationships crumble into dust. I can't, I whispered, taking a step backward. Marcus, I can't just leave with you. Look what we've done to her. Elena let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Oh, now you care about what you've done to me? After standing there and letting him kiss you in front of everyone I know. Her words stung because they contained enough truth to hurt. I hadn't pulled away from Marcus's kiss immediately. For those few seconds, I'd let myself get lost in the moment I'd been trying to deny for weeks. I never meant for this to happen, I said, my voice barely audible above the murmur of departing guests. Half the ballroom had already emptied, the Seattle business crowd eager to escape the family drama. The remaining Millbrook locals lingered with the morbid fascination of people witnessing a car accident. But you wanted it to happen, Elena accused, her blue eyes blazing with hurt and anger. Admit it, Sophia. You've been wanting this since the moment you met him. The accusation hung in the air between us. I could lie, could try to protect what remained of our relationship, but Elena deserved honesty after everything she'd endured tonight. Yes, I said quietly. I did want it. But wanting something and acting on it are different things. I never would have what? Stolen my fiancé if he hadn't done it himself? Elena's voice rose again, drawing the attention of the remaining guests. You think that makes you noble? You think keeping your feelings secret while smiling at me and helping plan my engagement party makes you a good person? Mom stepped forward, her mascara smudged from crying. Girls, please, not here, not in front of everyone. Can we go home and discuss this privately? No, Mom, Elena said, her gaze never leaving my face. I want everyone to hear this. I want them to know exactly what kind of person my sister really is. The cruelty in her tone made me flinch, but I couldn't blame her for it. Elena's entire life had just been shattered in the most public way possible, and I was partially responsible for that destruction. Marcus moved closer to me, his presence both comforting and dangerous. Sophia, we can't undo what's happened. The only question now is what we do next. What we do next? Dad's voice boomed across the ballroom. What you do next is stay away from my family. You've caused enough damage for one lifetime. Mr. Chen, I understand your anger, but I'm not going to walk away from Sophia. Not now that I've finally found the courage to tell the truth about how I feel. The truth? Elena laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a coward who waited until our engagement party to grow a conscience. The truth is that you wasted 3 years of my life while you figured out what you wanted. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. You're right. I should have been honest sooner. But I didn't understand my own feelings until I met Sophia. I thought what we had was enough, but it wasn't, Elena finished, her voice breaking on the words. I wasn't enough. The raw pain in my sister's voice cut through me like a blade. This wasn't just about a broken engagement. It was about her sense of self-worth, her belief in her own value, being destroyed in front of a crowd of witnesses. Elena, that's not true, I said, reaching toward her again. You are enough. You're brilliant and beautiful and accomplished. Any man would be lucky. Don't. She jerked away from my outstretched hand. Don't you dare try to comfort me right now. You don't get to be the supportive sister after what you've done. The remaining guests had formed a loose circle around us, their faces a mixture of fascination and discomfort. Mrs. Patterson from church clutched her husband's arm, whispering urgently in his ear. The young couple from Elena's law firm looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Even the catering staff had stopped cleaning up, frozen in place as they watched the drama unfold. Maybe we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, I suggested, suddenly aware of how many people were witnessing our family's destruction. Oh, now you want privacy? Elena's voice dripped with sarcasm. After your boyfriend decided to make his grand romantic declaration in front of 200 people? I think we're past the point of discretion, don't you? Marcus stepped forward, his expression hardening. Elena, I know you're hurt, but don't take it out on Sophia. None of this is her fault. Of course you'd defend her, Elena spat. Your precious Sophia, who's so independent and brave and different from boring old me. Tell me, Marcus, what exactly makes her so special? What does she have that I don't? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus looked at me, then back at Elena, his expression troubled. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but clear enough for everyone to hear. She makes me want to be better than I am, he said simply. When I'm with Sophia, I feel like the person I was meant to be instead of the person I thought I should be. Elena's face crumpled as if he'd struck her. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years of my life, and you never once felt that way about me. Elena. No, don't, she held up her hand to stop him. I get it now. I finally understand. She turned to face the remaining guests, her voice carrying across the ballroom with surprising strength. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the evening's entertainment. As you can see, there won't be a wedding in 6 months after all. With shaking hands, she pulled the engagement ring from her finger and held it out toward Marcus. The diamond caught the chandelier light, throwing rainbow reflections across the white tablecloths and wilted floral arrangements. Take it, she said when he didn't immediately reach for the ring. Give it to her, or return it to the jeweler, or throw it in the river. I don't care what you do with it, but I never want to see it again. Marcus reluctantly took the ring, his fingers closing around the expensive symbol of their failed relationship. Elena, I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I am truly sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 3 years, Elena replied, her voice hollow with exhaustion. Sorry doesn't undo the fact that I turned down Chicago for you. Sorry doesn't erase the humiliation of having my engagement party turn into a public breakup. She looked at me one final time, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and resignation that made my chest ache. I hope he's worth it, Sophia. I hope whatever you think you have with him is worth losing your sister over. Quote. Elena, please, I started, but she was already walking away, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she moved toward the ballroom's exit. Her shoulders were straight, her head held high despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Even in her devastation, she managed to maintain her dignity. Mom hurried after her, throwing one last disappointed look in my direction before disappearing through the French doors. Dad lingered for a moment, his expression a mixture of anger and profound sadness. I don't know who you are anymore, he said quietly, his words hitting me harder than any shouting could have. The daughter I raised would never have done this to her sister. Then he was gone too, leaving me alone with Marcus in a ballroom that now felt cavernous and cold. The remaining guests had finally begun to disperse, their excited whispers following them out into the night. The catering staff resumed their cleanup duties, but I could feel their curious glances as they collected abandoned champagne glasses and wilted centerpieces. Marcus reached for my hand, his fingers warm against my cold skin. Are you okay? I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. My family was destroyed, my relationship with Elena might be irreparable, and I'd just become the villain in a story that would be repeated in Millbrook's social circles for years to come. No, I said honestly, I'm not okay. None of this is okay. But you don't regret it, Marcus said, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty. The kiss, I mean. Us. I looked around the empty ballroom, at the overturned chairs and scattered rose petals, at the remnants of what should have been Elena's perfect night. Everything I'd known about my life, my family, my place in the world had been shattered in the span of an hour. I don't know what I regret, I admitted. I don't know anything anymore. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Then let's figure it out together, away from here, where we can actually think. I knew that leaving with him would be crossing a line I could never uncross. It would be choosing him over my family, romance over loyalty, my own desires over everyone else's expectations. But staying felt impossible too. How could I go home and face Mom's disappointment and Dad's anger? How could I return to Portland and pretend none of this had happened? Where would we go? I asked quietly. My hotel to start. Then maybe Seattle if you want. Or anywhere else you choose. We'll take it one day at a time. The offer was both thrilling and terrifying. A chance to start over, to build something new with a man who claimed to see the best version of me. But it would come at the cost of everything familiar, everyone I'd ever loved. As I stood there in the ruins of Elena's engagement party, I realized that some choices don't feel like choices at all. They feel like inevitabilities, like moments your entire life has been building toward whether you recognized it or not. I looked at Marcus's hopeful face, thought about Elena's devastated expression, and made the decision that would define the rest of my life. I followed Marcus out of the country club into the humid summer night, my heels echoing against the stone steps as we descended toward the parking lot. The contrast between the air-conditioned ballroom and the oppressive heat outside felt symbolic somehow, like I was stepping from one world into another, leaving behind everything safe and familiar. My car or yours? Marcus asked, pulling his keys from his pocket. The simple question felt monumental. Getting into his BMW would be a statement, a declaration that I was choosing him over my family. Taking my own car meant maintaining some control, some possibility of changing my mind. Mine, I said, fishing through my purse with trembling fingers. I need to be able to leave if this is a mistake. Marcus nodded, understanding flickering across his features. The Marriott downtown, room 847. I'll meet you there. He moved toward me as if to kiss me goodbye, then stopped himself, recognizing that we were still in full view of anyone leaving the country club. Even now, some part of him was trying to protect what remained of my reputation. The drive through Millbrook's quiet streets gave me 20 minutes to question every decision I'd made in the past hour. I passed the elementary school where Elena and I had played on the swings during summer evenings, the ice cream shop where Dad had taken us every Friday after piano lessons, the small downtown park where our family had attended 4th of July celebrations for decades. Each familiar landmark felt like a goodbye. My phone buzzed constantly against the passenger seat. Text messages from friends who'd been at the party, missed calls from my college roommate in Portland, even a voicemail from Aunt Rebecca in Denver, who'd somehow already heard about the evening's drama. Millbrook's gossip network moved faster than social media, and I knew that by morning, every detail of tonight's catastrophe would be common knowledge throughout the town. The Marriott's lobby was mercifully empty, except for a bored-looking desk clerk and a businessman reading a newspaper in one of the leather armchairs. I took the elevator to the 8th floor, my reflection in the polished steel doors showing a woman I barely recognized. Hair disheveled, makeup smudged, the confident smile I'd worn earlier replaced by an expression of shell-shocked uncertainty. Marcus opened his hotel room door before I could knock, as if he'd been watching through the peephole. He'd changed out of his formal suit into jeans and a gray t-shirt, making him look younger and more vulnerable than the confident businessman who'd commanded the ballroom earlier. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I'm here," I replied, stepping into the standard hotel room with its generic beige decor and view of the parking lot. "But I don't know what that means yet." Marcus moved to the window, giving me space to process. "Do you want something to drink? Coffee? There's a minibar, though hotel prices are robbery." The attempt at normalcy felt surreal after everything that had happened. An hour ago, we'd been at my sister's engagement party. Now we were alone in his hotel room, discussing overpriced minibar alcohol while our families dealt with the wreckage we'd left behind. "Marcus, what are we doing?" I asked, sinking into the room's single armchair. "Really, what is this? Because if you think you're in love with me, based on 3 weeks of stolen glances and guilty feelings, we need to talk about reality." He turned from the window, his green eyes serious. "You think I don't understand the magnitude of what just happened? I destroyed a 3-year relationship tonight. I humiliated Elena in front of everyone she knows. I probably ruined my business connections in this town. You think I'd do all that for some passing infatuation?" "People do stupid things when they're bored with their lives," I said, testing him. "Maybe I just seemed excited because I was different from Elena. Maybe this is just some midlife crisis manifesting as a romantic drama." Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside my chair, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with the faint scent of stress sweat. "Look at me, Sophia." "Really look at me. Do I seem like someone having a midlife crisis?" Quote, I studied his face, the slight lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours building his business, the intensity in his expression that suggested this wasn't a casual decision. Whatever Marcus was feeling, it wasn't frivolous. "No," I admitted quietly, "but that doesn't mean this isn't a disaster." "It is a disaster," he agreed. "The biggest disaster of my life. But walking away from you would be a bigger one." My phone rang, cutting through the moment. Elena's name appeared on the screen, and my heart clenched with guilt and longing. Part of me wanted to answer, to try to explain or apologize or somehow undo the damage. But I knew that anything I said right now would only make things worse. "She's been calling for the past 10 minutes, I said, declining the call. "My parents, too. Even my boss in Portland somehow heard about what happened." "The Millbrook gossip network strikes again," Marcus said wryly. I forgot how fast news travels in small towns. "This isn't just gossip, Marcus. This is my life, my relationships, my family." I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window to look down at the parking lot where my car sat next to his BMW. Do you have any idea what you've cost me tonight? Tell me, he said quietly. Elena will never forgive me, never. We've been best friends since we were kids, and now she thinks I'm the kind of person who steals her boyfriend. My parents are ashamed of me. Did you see my dad's face? And my job in Portland, the life I built there, it's all going to be colored by this scandal now. So what's the alternative? Marcus asked. I go back to Elena, we pretend tonight never happened, and we all live lies for the rest of our lives? You think that would be better for anyone? I think it would be better for Elena, I shot back. She didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you, Marcus pointed out. Neither did I, for that matter. Sometimes life doesn't give you good choices, Sophia. Sometimes it only gives you honest ones and dishonest ones. I turned away from the window to face him. And you think running away together is the honest choice? I think staying with Elena when I'm in love with you would be the dishonest one. The word love hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. It was the first time either of us had used that word, and hearing it made everything feel simultaneously more real and more terrifying. You don't know me well enough to love me, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. Don't I? Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I know you turned down higher-paying jobs because creative freedom mattered more than money. I know you drive 4 hours every month to volunteer at that literacy program in Salem because Elena mentioned it once. I know you hate being the center of attention, but you'd do anything for the people you care about. I know you've been carrying guilt about your feelings for me since the moment we met, which tells me everything I need to know about your character. Each observation hit with startling accuracy, revealing how much attention he'd been paying during our brief interactions. Elena told you those things about me. Elena told me facts about you, but I figured out who you are by watching you. The way you calm people down when they're stressed. Like you did with the florist yesterday when Elena was being impossible. The way you step back and let other people shine instead of competing for attention. The way you've been torturing yourself over feelings you never asked for and never acted on. His words painted a picture of myself that I rarely acknowledged. Someone thoughtful and selfless, rather than the selfish sister-stealer Elena now saw me as. That doesn't change what we've done, I said weakly. No, it doesn't, but it means we have a chance at building something real, something worth the cost. And if we try and it doesn't work, if this connection we think we have turns out to be just chemistry and proximity, then we'll have destroyed everything for nothing. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering my question seriously. Then we'll have to live with that. But Sophia, what if it does work? What if this is the beginning of something that makes all the pain worthwhile? My phone buzzed with another text message. This time it was from Mom. Come home. We need to talk as a family. They want me to come home, I said, showing him the message. Do you want to go? I thought about facing my parents' disappointment, about sitting in our living room while they tried to understand how their responsible oldest daughter had become someone capable of such betrayal. I thought about the empty chair at Sunday dinners where Elena used to sit, about holidays that would never be the same, about becoming the family scandal that people whispered about for years. I want to go back in time and make different choices, I said honestly. But since that's not possible... I looked at Marcus's hopeful face, at this man who'd upended his entire life on the possibility of something deeper with me. The smart thing would be to go home, face the consequences, and try to rebuild the relationships I damaged. The safe thing would be to end this before it went any further. But as I stood in that generic hotel room, looking at my own reflection in the dark window, I realized that the smart, safe choice wasn't always the right one. Sometimes you had to choose the uncertain path that led toward the person you were meant to become, even if it meant leaving behind the person you'd always been. Since that's not possible, I said quietly, I guess we'll figure out what comes next. Marcus's face lit up with relief and joy, but I held up my hand before he could speak. But we do this right, Marcus. No more running away, no more dramatic gestures. If we're gonna try this, we do it honestly and carefully, with respect for the people we've hurt. And we accept that some bridges might be burned forever. He nodded solemnly. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. As I turned off my phone and set it aside, I knew I was closing the door on the life I'd known for 28 years. Tomorrow would bring consequences I couldn't predict, conversations I didn't want to have, and a future that was completely uncertain. But for the first time in weeks, I also felt something I hadn't expected: hope. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Marcus's Seattle penthouse, watching the sunrise paint Elliott Bay in shades of gold and coral. The Space Needle pierced the morning sky like an exclamation point, and below us, the city was already awakening with the energy that had drawn me here despite everything I'd left behind. Marcus emerged from his home office, his hair tousled from running his hands through it. A habit I'd learned meant he was wrestling with a difficult decision. He'd been on a conference call with investors since 5 a.m., discussing the expansion of his restaurant empire into Portland. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Coffee?" I asked, holding up the French press I'd been perfecting since moving in 3 months ago. "Please," he said, accepting the mug with a grateful smile. "The Portland investors want to meet next week. They're interested in the waterfront location we scouted." Quote. I nodded, stirring cream into my own coffee while avoiding his eyes. Portland remained a complicated subject between us. The city where I'd built my independence, where my boss had held my job open for 2 months before finally hiring my replacement, where friends still asked careful questions about my dramatic exit from Millbrook. "Have you heard from Elena lately?" Marcus asked gently, the question he posed every few weeks with the same cautious tone. "No," I said, the single word carrying 6 months of accumulated grief. "Mom says she's doing well in Chicago." The partnership track position opened up again, and they offered it to her. Elena had left for Chicago 2 weeks after the engagement party, accepting the opportunity she'd previously turned down for Marcus. According to Mom's careful updates during our monthly phone calls, my sister was thriving professionally, dating a fellow attorney, and steadfastly refusing to discuss me or anything related to what she now referred to as, quote, the incident. "That's good news about the partnership," Marcus said, though we both knew that Elena's success couldn't heal the wound that still festered between us. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop, a text from my new boss at the marketing firm where I'd found work in Seattle. The transition hadn't been easy. My portfolio was strong, but the gap in my employment history required awkward explanations that never quite captured the complexity of why I'd left Portland so abruptly. "Emergency client meeting," I said, reading the message. "The tech startup wants to move up their campaign launch by 2 weeks. Will you be home for dinner?" Marcus asked, already knowing that my unpredictable schedule was part of rebuilding my career from scratch. "I'll try," I said, kissing him goodbye with the easy intimacy we'd developed over months of learning each other's rhythms. "Don't wait up if the meeting runs late." The commute to my office in Belltown gave me 30 minutes to mentally prepare for another day of proving myself in a new city where nobody knew my story. My colleagues saw me as the talented transplant from Portland who'd chosen love over career advancement, a romantic narrative that bore little resemblance to the messy reality of what had brought me here. The tech startup meeting consumed most of my morning, their young founders filled with the manic energy of people convinced they were changing the world through a food delivery app. I found myself thinking about Marcus's restaurants, how he'd built something lasting and meaningful, instead of chasing the next trendy disruption. During my lunch break, I finally returned the call I'd been avoiding all week. My college roommate Jessica, who'd been my closest friend before geography and life circumstances pulled us in different directions. "Sophia Chen, you are officially the worst at staying in touch." Jessica's voice carried the mock annoyance of someone who genuinely missed me. "I've been calling for 3 weeks. I know, I'm sorry. Work has been insane, and Marcus is dealing with the restaurant expansion, and you're still not happy," Jessica interrupted with the bluntness that had made her such a good friend in college. "I can hear it in your voice." I leaned back in my office chair, staring out at the Seattle skyline that had become familiar but not yet home. "I'm not unhappy. It's just complicated." "Everything's complicated when you blow up your entire life for a guy you barely knew," Jessica said, not unkindly. "The question is whether it was worth it." That question had haunted me for 6 months, emerging during quiet moments when the guilt overwhelmed the contentment I'd found with Marcus. Was the love we'd built together worth the price we'd all paid? "I don't know," I admitted. Some days I think we're building something beautiful together. Other days I feel like I'm living someone else's life, pretending to be the kind of person who abandons her family for romance. Have you talked to Elena at all? She won't speak to me, won't even acknowledge my existence when I call Mom. It's like I died 6 months ago. Jessica was quiet for a moment, processing the pain in my voice. You know, when we were in college, you used to say that Elena was the brave one, because she always knew what she wanted. But maybe you were the brave one for finally choosing what you wanted, even when it was terrifying. I hurt people, Jess, people I love. Yeah, you did. But staying in a situation that was making everyone miserable wouldn't have been brave. It would have been cowardly. Elena deserves someone who's completely crazy about her, not someone who's settling because it's safe. Her words offered a perspective I'd been struggling to embrace, the idea that my choice might have been painful but ultimately honest. Marcus and I had talked about this countless times during the difficult early months of our relationship, when the guilt threatened to poison what we were trying to build together. The afternoon brought a crisis with another client, their social media campaign requiring emergency damage control after a tone-deaf tweet went viral. I threw myself into the work, grateful for problems that had clear solutions and measurable outcomes. By the time I left the office, downtown Seattle was transitioning into its evening rhythm, office workers heading to happy hour spots while tourists emerged from hotels to explore the city. Instead of going home, I found myself walking toward Pike Place Market, drawn by the need to be around people and energy. The vendors were cleaning up for the day, but the famous fish-throwing stall was still active, entertaining a group of out-of-town visitors with their theatrical seafood sales. I bought flowers from one of the vendors, white roses that reminded me of the arrangements from Elena's ruined engagement party. The symbolism wasn't lost on me as I carried them through the crowded market, past the original Starbucks and the musicians playing for tourist tips. My phone rang as I emerged onto First Avenue. Mom's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with the mixture of anticipation and dread that had characterized our relationship since I'd left Millbrook. Hi, Mom. Sophia, honey, how are you? Her voice carried the careful neutrality she'd adopted. Loving but cautious, like she was still figuring out how to talk to the daughter who'd become a stranger. I'm okay, busy with work, but okay, how are things there? Your father's blood pressure is better since he started taking those walks around the neighborhood. Mrs. Henderson asks about you every time I see her at the grocery store. She says Marcus's restaurant's got a write-up in some Seattle magazine. These updates had become Mom's way of maintaining connection without addressing the elephant in every conversation, the fact that her family had been fractured and might never fully heal. That's nice about Dad's health, I said, settling onto a bench overlooking the waterfront. And yes, Marcus's business is doing well. The Seattle Times food critic loved the new location. That's wonderful, dear. I'm glad things are working out for you both. The polite distance in her voice still hurt, even after 6 months. Before the engagement party, Mom and I had talked multiple times a week about everything and nothing. Now our conversations felt like diplomatic negotiations between friendly but wary nations. Mom, have you talked to Elena recently? A pause. She called last week. The partnership is going well, and she's enjoying Chicago. She mentioned she's seeing someone, another attorney at her firm. That's good. I'm glad she's happy. Sophia, she needs more time. What happened was very difficult for her. I know, Mom, I understand. But understanding didn't make the loss hurt less. Elena and I had shared everything for 28 years. First crushes, college anxieties, career disappointments, family secrets. Now there was a wall between us that felt impenetrable, built from hurt and betrayal and stubborn pride on both sides. I should go, I said, watching a ferry cross the bay toward Bainbridge Island. Give my love to Dad. We love you too, sweetheart, both of you. I hope you know that. After ending the call, I sat on the bench for a long time, watching the sun set over Puget Sound while couples and families walked past on their evening strolls. The white roses lay beside me, their perfume mixing with the salt air and the distant smell of fish from the market. When I finally made it home, Marcus was in the kitchen, pulling a roasted chicken from the oven. He'd set the dining table with our good plates and lit candles, creating the kind of intimate evening that had become precious to both of us after long days spent proving ourselves in demanding careers. How was the crisis management? He asked, accepting the flowers with a smile that still made my heart skip after 6 months. Successful. The client's reputation is intact, and I probably just earned myself a promotion to senior account manager. That's fantastic, Sophia. I'm proud of you. His genuine enthusiasm for my professional successes was one of the things I'd grown to love most about Marcus. Unlike Elena's competitive streak or my parents' well-meaning but anxious concern about my choices, Marcus celebrated my achievements without comparing them to his own or worrying about what they meant for our relationship. Over dinner, we talked about his Portland expansion plans, my client's campaign launch, the weekend trip we were planning to Victoria. The conversation flowed with the ease we'd developed. Two people who'd found their rhythm together despite the unconventional circumstances of their beginning. I got an interesting call today, Marcus said as we cleared the dishes, from Elena's former law firm in Millbrook. They're handling some legal work for the restaurant group, and they needed to verify some information about our engagement. I froze, a wine glass halfway to the sink. What kind of information? Just dates and details for their records. But the attorney mentioned that Elena had recommended their firm to me originally before everything happened. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Even before our relationship had imploded, Elena had been looking out for Marcus's business interests, connecting him with legal resources that would help his expansion plans. It was such a perfectly Elena thing to do. Thoughtful, strategic, generous toward someone she loved. She was trying to help your business, I said quietly. Yeah, even when she had every reason to hate me, she was still trying to help. Marcus moved closer, recognizing the guilt that had clouded my expression. Sophia, you can't carry Elena's generosity like it's another thing we took from her. Can't I? She was being the perfect fiancé, thinking about your future, making connections for you, and we were falling in love, Marcus finished gently. Neither of us planned it or wanted it to happen that way, but we can't change it now. He was right, but the knowledge of Elena's continued kindness toward him even after our betrayal felt like another layer of guilt to add to the collection I'd been building for 6 months. Do you ever regret it? I asked, the question I'd been afraid to voice for weeks. Walking away from her, from the life you'd planned. Marcus considered the question seriously, which I appreciated more than an immediate denial would have meant. I regret the way it happened. I regret the pain we caused. But regret leaving her for you? No, Sophia, never. Even knowing what we know now, about Chicago, about the legal connections, about how she's had to rebuild everything, even knowing all of that. He cupped my face in his hands, his green eyes serious. Because staying with Elena when I felt this way about you wouldn't have been noble, it would have been cruel. She deserves someone who chooses her first, not someone who settles for her because it's easier than facing the truth. Quote, that night, as we lay in bed watching the city lights reflect off the water, I thought about the different kinds of love that had shaped the past year. Elena's love had been generous and strategic, building a life designed for success and stability. My parents' love was conditional, strained by disappointment but enduring beneath the hurt. And Marcus's love was transformative, demanding honesty even when it was painful, pushing both of us to become better versions of ourselves. 3 weeks later, I was promoted to senior account manager, a recognition that felt like validation of my decision to start over in Seattle. Marcus's Portland location opened to rave reviews, proving that our personal drama hadn't damaged his business reputation beyond repair. We were building something together, not just a relationship, but a life that honored both our ambitions and our connection. The morning of what would have been Marcus and Elena's wedding day, I woke up to find him sitting on our bedroom's window seat, staring out at Elliott Bay with an expression I couldn't read. You remembered, I said, joining him on the bench. Hard to forget, he replied, his arms circling my shoulders. 6 months ago, she was supposed to be walking down the aisle. We sat in silence for a while, both of us thinking about the parallel universe where Elena wore a white dress and promised to love Marcus forever, where I sat in a pew as the supportive sister and pretended my heart wasn't breaking. Do you think she's thinking about it too? I asked. Probably. But I think she's also probably grateful she didn't marry someone who wasn't completely devoted to her. It was a generous interpretation, one that gave Elena credit for wisdom and strength I hoped she possessed but couldn't confirm. We'd caused her tremendous pain, but maybe Marcus was right that we'd also saved her from a marriage that would have been built on lies and compromise. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown Chicago number. For a moment, my heart stopped, wondering if Elena had finally decided to reach out. But the message was from her new boyfriend, someone named David, who'd apparently gotten my number from Mom. "I wanted you to know that Elena is happy," the message read. "Really happy. She talks about her sister sometimes, about how much she misses your friendship. I think you should know that she's not angry anymore, just sad. Maybe someday that will be enough to start a conversation." Quote. I showed the message to Marcus, whose face softened as he read it. "That's something, isn't it? Not anger anymore, just sadness." "It's something," I agreed, though I wasn't sure if Elena's sadness was better or worse than her anger. Anger could be overcome, but sadness suggested a deeper loss that might be permanent. Later that afternoon, I called Mom to let her know about my promotion. She was genuinely excited, her pride in my professional success overriding her concerns about my personal choices. "Your father and I have been talking," she said near the end of our conversation. "We'd like to come visit Seattle sometime soon. See where you're living, meet Marcus properly, take you both to dinner." The offer was unexpected, a bridge extended after months of careful distance. "Are you sure? You don't have to feel obligated. Sophia, you're our daughter. We love you, and we want to be part of your life, wherever that life takes you. We may not understand all your choices, but we respect them." After hanging up, I found Marcus in his office, reviewing plans for a potential third restaurant location. "My parents want to visit," I told him. "That's wonderful," he said, pulling me onto his lap. "Are you ready for that?" "I think so. It feels like maybe we're all ready to start moving forward instead of just surviving what happened." That evening, we drove to Discovery Park to watch the sunset over Puget Sound. As we walked along the bluff trail, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from stolen glances at an engagement party to building a life together in a new city, from family scandal to the possibility of acceptance and forgiveness. "Do you think we'll ever stop feeling guilty about how this started?" I asked as we found a bench overlooking the water. "Maybe," Marcus said thoughtfully. "But maybe the guilt is important. It keeps us honest about what our choices cost other people. It makes us work harder to deserve what we found together." A year later, on a crisp October morning, I received a text message from Elena. After 18 months of silence, her name appearing on my phone felt like seeing a ghost. "I heard about your engagement from Mom." The message read, "I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely happy for you both. You deserve each other, in the best possible way. Maybe someday we can talk. Not today, but someday." Quote. I stared at the message for a long time, tears blurring my vision as I realized that Elena's capacity for forgiveness was greater than I dared to hope. Marcus found me crying in our kitchen, and when I showed him the text, his own eyes filled with relief and gratitude. "She's going to be okay," he said, holding me close. "We're all going to be okay." Looking back now, I understand that love isn't always a choice between right and wrong. Sometimes it's a choice between different kinds of truth. Elena's truth was building something stable and planned, choosing security and compatibility over passion. My truth was following an unexpected connection, even when it meant destroying the life I'd known. Neither choice was inherently better than the other, but both required courage, and both had consequences that rippled far beyond the people making them. In the end, we all found ways to rebuild, to forgive, and to create new definitions of happiness that honored both our losses and our discoveries. Marcus and I married in a small ceremony overlooking Elliott Bay, with my parents in attendance and Elena's blessing carried in a card that arrived the morning of our wedding. We built a life together that was worth the price we'd all paid, but we never forgot that price, or pretended it hadn't been steep. Some love stories begin with fairy tale meetings and progress through predictable stages to happily ever after. Others begin with destruction and require everyone involved to rebuild themselves from the ruins. Ours was the second kind, messier, more complicated, but ultimately more honest about the complexities of human connection and the courage required to choose authenticity over comfort. Elena found her own happiness in Chicago, building a career and relationship that suited the woman she'd become after surviving betrayal. My parents learned to accept that their daughters had chosen very different paths, but deserved love and support regardless of those choices. And Marcus and I discovered that a relationship born from difficult circumstances could grow into something beautiful, if both people were willing to do the work of earning it every single day. The engagement party that was supposed to celebrate Elena's future became the catalyst for all of us to discover who we really were when everything familiar was stripped away. In the end, that destruction created space for all of us to rebuild more authentically, even if the process required us to forgive both ourselves and each other for being imperfect humans who sometimes choose love over loyalty, honesty over kindness, and uncertain hope over comfortable lies. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.